All right, wonderful. Thank you so much, Jamie, and thank you so much to the California Healthy Nail Salon Collaborative for inviting me today to speak at this very important convening. I will be kicking off a panel that will be discussing the federal Safer Beauty Bill package. And I'm actually calling in from beautiful Mount Shasta, California, where 23 climbers, women and men who have been touched by breast cancer, are attempting to summit this 14,179-foot mountain to raise funds and awareness for breast cancer prevention and the work of breast cancer prevention partners. So it's a very poignant time for us to be talking about toxic chemicals in salon products. Next slide, please. So amazingly, next slide after that, thank you. Amazingly, the European Union has banned or restricted chemicals linked to cancer, birth defects, reproductive harm, and genetic mutation from nearly 2,000 chemicals, compared to only 11 chemicals that have been banned or restricted from cosmetics by the United States. That means that chemicals that salon workers come in contact with daily are threatening their health. And again, these are chemicals that are banned from cosmetics by the European Union, but legal for use here in the United States. Chemicals like formaldehyde, which is a known human carcinogen that can be found in both hair straighteners and nail polish. Aminophenyldiamine, which is a chemical linked to asthma and cancer, which is found in hair dyes. Dibutyl phthalate, a reproductive toxicant, also found in nail products and fragrance products, products that smell good. And then two formaldehyde releasing chemicals, quaternium 15, and also parabens, which doesn't release formaldehyde, but is a hormone disrupting chemical, and both of which are linked to breast cancer. Next slide, please. The lack of authority on the part of the Food and Drug Administration, which is the entity that's responsible for regulating the safety of the ingredients in cosmetic products, creates a real buyer beware situation for both consumers and professional salon workers. Amazingly, there's only 2.5 pages of federal law to regulate a nearly $100 billion cosmetics industry. Cosmetic manufacturers may almost use any raw material as a cosmetic ingredient without any FDA pre-market safety testing or review of the safety of those ingredients. The FDA can't even issue a mandatory recall of cosmetic products, even if they have been proved to be harming salon workers or consumers. And a really good example of that was Brazilian Blowout, which was found to contain more than 10% formaldehyde by weight, even though the product was being marketed as formaldehyde free. Next slide, please. So to address this problem, a suite of 4 bills were introduced in the House of Representatives in October of 2022. And these 4 bills address critical gaps in cosmetic safety that impact everyone, but especially professional salon workers and women of color. Next slide, please. The bill that I'm going to talk to you about is HR 5539. It's the Federal Cosmetic Supply Chain Transparency Act of 2021. And it was introduced by Jan Schakowsky, a representative from Chicago, Illinois. This bill requires supply chain transparency across the entire supply chain. There are hundreds and hundreds of entities that make up the cosmetic supply chain, from the companies that actually make and provide the ingredients that are used to formulate cosmetic products to cosmetic manufacturers, to the formulating labs that actually make the finished products, to the entities that ship and store and package the products themselves. Yet there is no governmental entity of any kind that regulates the safety of the entities that make up the cosmetic industry supply chain. And this is a real problem for all of us, because if the end user, which is surprisingly not us, it's not the consumer or the worker, it's the cosmetic company itself, doesn't have full transparency, they can't ensure that the ingredients in their products are safe. Next slide, please. So the first plank of this bill requires full ingredient disclosure to the cosmetic company from the supplier of fragrance and flavor ingredients or preservative systems or other ingredient formulations, to the cosmetic company itself, the brand owner, as well as to the retailer. So what that means is the list of all the ingredients that make up the fragrance or the flavor, which could be hundreds of ingredients. And this information is currently hidden from the cosmetic company itself. The second part of this particular provision requires the formulating laboratories and the contract manufacturers to provide a full and complete list of ingredients in a finished cosmetic product. You might be surprised to know that most cosmetic companies aren't cooking up their cosmetic products in their kitchen. They're contracting with these entities called formulating laboratories. Like most companies, except for the big multinationals, contract with formulating labs who actually make the product, and then the company itself or the retailer just slaps its label on the product. And again, the cosmetic companies and the retailers don't always know all of the ingredients in the finished product that they're buying from these formulating labs. Next slide, please. The second plank, which is very important, requires suppliers of raw materials, cosmetic ingredients, and the finished cosmetic products themselves to test for contaminants in those ingredients or in those finished products, and then provide what's called a certificate of analysis, which is a contaminant report, to the cosmetic company or to the retailer. This is, again, really critically important, and I'll give you a few examples as to why. There's been a lot of advocacy and organizing around the discovery that many lots of Johnson & Johnson baby powder have been found to be contaminated with asbestos. And Johnson & Johnson doesn't put asbestos in their baby powder, but the suppliers of talc, which is the raw material that makes up the baby powder, don't always fully test for asbestos contamination. And talc and asbestos, literally they're raw minerals that grow side by side. So when companies mine for talc, there can be literally threads of asbestos that wind through that talc. And if the supplier doesn't test for the asbestos contamination, or does test but doesn't make the testing results available to the manufacturer, you can end up with a situation where a company like Johnson & Johnson is selling an asbestos contaminated cosmetic product. And it's not just baby powder. A lot of mineral makeup companies use talc as a raw material as well. Another really good example is pigments or colorants. They can often be contaminated with heavy metals, lead and other heavy metals, and then petrolatum, which is the basis of a lot of cosmetic and personal care products, can be contaminated with PAHs or polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons which are also linked to breast cancer. Next
Janet,
slide.
just want to give you a 1-minute warning.
1 minute. Okay.
1 minute.
So I'm just about done. So this next slide requires the suppliers to provide toxicity, use, and safety data on ingredients to cosmetic companies as well. Next slide. Oh, I think that's my last slide. So just in summary, I was supposed to let you know the status of this bill. This is pretty exciting. The bills were only introduced in the House, but a big comprehensive cosmetic safety bill was just marked up and voted on yesterday by the Senate Health Committee, which is the health committee in the Senate. And within that bill, there's a provision that requires ingredient disclosure in professional salon products. So that's excellent news. None of the Safety Beauty bill content was incorporated in the Senate bill. But when the Senate bill and the House bill get reconciled through a conference committee process, there's an opportunity to advocate for inclusion of both the Supply Chain Transparency Act and the other bills you're going to be hearing more about in the next few minutes. Thanks so much.